This will not be a highlight video. You will not see Ryan Dorse screaming at me to lock out that deadlift, but it's going to give you guys a good understanding of how it is that I have my training laid out at the moment. And we discussed the basics in that first video, but you guys will get to see it in motion this whole week. So this is day one, and we're starting this week with actually lower body. So a lower body volume day. And again, the cycle's just starting off, and it starts off pretty easy. And you're going to see that while most of my loads are to some degree, well, they're written out, there is some auto regulation in it, and that's going to make more sense towards the end of the week. But today was a volume lower body day, and the two lifts that I'm going to be programming are going to be my front squat and my Romanian deadlift. And again, nothing too challenging. I think I had 220 something for, this is 221 on the bar, but I think I was scheduled for 222 according to my calculator. 221 for sets of 7. And, again, I'm a little on the tight side today, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the hours leading to this training session, I was pretty much in one spot the whole day. So typically the front squat's one of those movements that I think fits me like a glove, but it didn't feel like that on this day. So thankfully it was just the beginning of the cycle, and we're just barely starting to really get things moving. So front squat for now, simply until this SI joint of mine that's been acting up a little bit of late gets its act together, which typically just requires me to back off it for a minute, and then it usually does a good job mending. And it wasn't something that I actually hurt weightlifting, but it was something that I ended up banging up on a hike. I was jumping off rocks, going off trail basically, and that's how it happened. And I don't regret that because it was a really fun hike. New kicks right now. Still kind of getting used to these, and as you can see, my heel is just slightly coming off the floor, and I think again a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm coming. Prior to this, I was using the Nikes, and those certainly have a bit higher of a heel, and I'm still a little lost, but the transition hasn't been all that bad, and I think in the long run it's just going to make more sense. So this is the final set of my squats on this day, and even though I felt tired, I felt a little lost. I think it had been about 2 days since I had lifted weights, and that's actually quite a bit for me, since typically I do train 6 days a week. I was a little lost, but I think all things considered, it's thankfully it was a lighter day, so there wasn't too much unnecessary drama going on, other than the fact that I felt a little lost. Speaking of feeling lost, this movement right here, the Romanian deadlift, is what I will be using for the time being. And I think the main reason is because when it comes to just development issues, and again, I do enjoy getting stronger. I enjoy powerlifting, but I think, I'm sure actually, bodybuilding is what I will be specializing in, and my hamstrings just really don't match up with everything else in my lower body. I think my quads are definitely much better. Glute development for sure is miles ahead of my hamstrings, and it's almost getting to the point that what was a really weak body part on me, my calves, they're starting to kind of overshadow my hamstrings. So we're going to start using this movement. I was going to go with a snatch grip deadlift, but I think it doesn't hurt to include this movement for a few training cycles, and then obviously as I get closer to a powerlifting meet, start to actually pull off the floor. So one thing about this movement though is that I'm not very good at it, and those of you that are well aware as to how a Romanian deadlift should look like, I'm definitely a little lost, and it's because basically it just feels like I'm running through a movement in the most unconventional. It feels like the most inefficient deadlift variation you can possibly think of. My hips are away from the bar. I'm I'm not using certain muscle groups to the like for example my quads to the same extent that I would with a standard deadlift, whether it be conventional or sumo. So I'm a bit lost, but I think as time goes on, I'll be a bit more proficient on this lift, and it won't look this bad. But yeah, this is these are the two movements in which I will be keeping. I guess I'm loading and using percentages and being very meticulous as to how I progress on these movements. Everything else after this is going to be, I guess, more bodybuilder-ish. But again, hamstrings, we're definitely going to work on bringing those up, because they're getting to the point where I do think they're just being overshadowed by my calves, which tells you a lot, because I have some really bad calf attachments, and that they're basically they're very high calf attachments. So we're gonna run with this Romanian deadlift, and hopefully those hamstrings they make a little spurt in progress. So for those of you who don't know, I am about 6 months post show. And that definitely, I think, is enough time to have made some improvements, and I certainly do think I have. I think there's been improvements to my posterior chain. I think for sure mid-back has made some tremendous improvements. Hamstrings have not, though. So we're really going to be focusing on hamstrings, and that's going to be the theme of my off season this year is hamstrings and back. So those two body parts just they're quite the stubborn body parts. And after we get done with our basic movements, I'm getting into some blood flow restriction. And yes, I'm doing my quads before I do my hamstrings, but I feel that if I fatigue my quadriceps a bit before I get to the isolation movements, I actually get a much better contraction, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the quads are fatigued from the blood flow restriction. So that was my final set there, and we went to calves. And again, I like to throw calves rather than at the end of my workout, somewhere in the middle, and they kind of work as an intermission of sorts. One thing about the calves is they've definitely have progressed quite a bit over the last few years, and I think a lot of that has to do with a few things. I think, namely, the just technique. I think just those big pauses at the bottom go a long way in really putting that Achilles tendon to sleep, and especially in my case where my Achilles tendon is basically like 2/3 of my lower leg. So it really helps get rid of that, and really helps you load the muscle in a much more efficient way. And then also I think just committing to doing calves and throwing them in a bit earlier in the workout while I'm still pretty fresh, I think has helped. But I think most importantly, simply because the thing about calf raises is that no one really cares how strong you are. You don't care how strong you are. A PR on a calf raise machine just isn't that thrilling. So we're not that emotionally attached to the loads we lift on calf raises, and I know that's certainly the case for me. So I think when it comes to my progress on calf raises, simply because I've been so patient, because I'm not emotionally attached to the movement or any weight, I've been able to progress the way maybe we should progress on all movements, and I've been very patient and very diligent with form. So yeah, definitely not treating them like there's some foreign weird muscle group. Typically, the way I do a lot of my assistance movements is, 1 week I work with 12s, 1 week I work with 10s, and then with 8s, and then we try to basically, get stronger in some way, or at least get a little better with every time we rotate those rep ranges. And calves, I'm certainly working with that 12, 8, and 12, 10, 8 scheme. And then last but not least, this was the last movement of the day. We had it was a 4x12 on the standing hamstring curl, and the way we're doing this one. So just to kind of go over my progression scheme. So it's either going to be that way where I'm going to be lifting a weight in the 12 rep range, the 10, and then the 8, and obviously so every week it's going to get heavier. The way I like to do my very last movement of the day, typically it's going to be in the 12 to 15 rep range, and just a very convenient way to gobble up some volume, which becomes a little bit more important, especially when you've been training for a while. It's quite simple, just 12 to 15, and I believe I did 12. Sometimes I lose count when the reps are this high, but the goal is to basically fill up each one of those sets until you get to the point where you're able to you're able to basically do sets of 15. And right now at the moment we are still barely on 12, but over the course of many weeks we'll add a rep here, a rep there, and then before you know it they're all 15s, and then it's time to move on, and again you start with 12s again. So that's typically how I'm doing a lot of my accessory work. It's either going to be in the, I'm going to do the whole 12, 10, 8, and kind of rotate those rep ranges each week, or I'm going to do it in this fashion where, I pick a weight that I can do for 4 sets of 12 in this case, and just keep adding reps here and there until I can fill them all out with 15s. And then definitely some blood flow restriction, especially when the training cycle does get a little bit heavier and it can, wear on your joints a bit. And blood flow restriction really comes in handy when it comes to just kind of easing things up and, not having to overload those joints any more than you need to at times. So you will see me pull out that card from time to time. But this is day 1. So again, not very exciting, definitely not a Sports Center highlight. You're definitely watching innings 1 through 9 right now, but I wanted to give you guys a good understanding as to what the whole training week looks like. And again, it just kind of brings back the point that also, I think often, especially old training journals, or if you keep up with me on Instagram, I'll post highlights. And it's not always about the highlights, but just that daily grind and, doing this for a very, very long time. And at this point, I've been doing this long enough to, I guess I take my training age with a little bit of pride that I've been doing this for 15 years, and a lot of it hasn't been highlights, but just showing up. And we showed up today, got work done. We have an upper body volume, or is it strength? I don't know, but we have another video that will be posted in a few hours. So looking forward to sharing that with you guys. So day 1 complete.